to Are We the Only Ones? I'm Kathy, and today I'm going to talk about the Knicks. One of the really weird things that I find out about myself is when I'm not really plugged into a sport or TV show or whatever, or like a musician, for instance. Like when I was in my high school, I didn't like, and also in college, I never liked to listen to music made by people that were younger than me because I felt like it was weird to like platform or like, was it my platform, like put somebody on a pedestal that was somebody younger than me. I thought that was weird. And so music like Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, all this stuff had to penetrate into my life because it became so mainstream. And so one of the things that is like that is the Knicks. And to a certain extent, because I lived in New York and I've been to a Knicks game at MSG. I've seen Jeremy and Lin play for the Brooklyn Nets. So I obviously have some connection with basketball. I played basketball, so I understand strategy, how hard it is. And I've even refed before for it's called like the Ninja League or something in NorCal. It's like mostly Japanese kids that play basketball, but they're really good. And so what I took away from the Knicks championship after the drought of 53 years of not having a championship since 1973, which apparently was also the same. That newspaper in 1973, where the Knicks won, was also the same newspaper where Donald Trump has a whole article about him and his family being anti-black and using anti-black bias for their housing. So I thought that was interesting because the Knicks beating the Spurs is sort of like a symbolic battle between North and South, right? And I have a new appreciation for sports. I participated in sports. I was a competitive gymnast. I was good enough to be written up in newspapers. I was the co-captain of my team, and I was MVP of my team. And I appreciate sports for how hard it is to become a good athlete and to be good at what you do and to work hard and get there. Because to me, sports is a great equalizer. You have all these different ways to discriminate in the world, and you can still discriminate in sports. Don't get me wrong, because Jeremy Lin definitely, when you hear his story of Linsanity back again, because I was there the first time when it was happening, and I remember being in the city, watching him play on TV, and just being like, I can't believe this guy's like. Other than Yao Ming, there was no Asian American, or there's no Asian in basketball, and he's the first Asian American to have like a legendary legacy, right? So what's interesting is I went back to watch the Linsanity games during that time, and then I ended up also watching the Carmelo Anthony Jeremy Lin interview on Carmelo Anthony's podcast. I think it's called The Wave. And what I took away from that was the misunderstanding. They had 14 years that they had not spoken about how Jeremy Lin had the crazy Linsanity run, and then the Knicks did not offer him a deal, a contract, which was, it made no sense at the time because it was, as a New York fan, I remember all the fans were like, what do you mean you're cutting him loose? Like, what are you talking about? And it seemed like it was like Jeremy Lin was taking the money from Houston and not so much caring about, the legacy with New York. Now, what I found interesting was that Jeremy Lin never even got to he told his agent he would take less. But his agent was like, no, you can't even take less because there's no deal. They're making 0 offers. Like, there's no contract from New York whatsoever. And Houston offered $25 million. And I think Houston was genius because as a poker player, I think what Houston's management did was they offered the $25 million to basically kill the Linsanity possible New York Knicks run to a possible final back in 2012. And there's other weird touch points for me. Like Jeremy Lin and I he's from Palo Alto. I'm from Los Altos. Those are neighboring cities. Both Asian athletes in NorCal, which mostly predominantly white area, especially when we were both. He's younger than me by I want to say like 8 years, something like that. But and then his run is February 4th, 2012, I believe, is like the first date of when everything kicks off. And like February for me, February 9th is when my oldest was born. So like these dates, like, I can't help it like coincide, and like now I can imprint these dates to my memory. But one of the things that I thought was interesting was that Carmelo Anthony and Jeremy Lin had a talk and hashed out what happened, because there was a narrative that Carmelo Anthony didn't like Jeremy Lin because he had said that the amount of money, the jump would be ridiculous. But he meant it would be ridiculous for the penalties of the salary cap, which is just saying like, wow, this guy only made him for $400,000 and now you're going to offer it. You're considering matching him at $25 million. That is a crazy, ridiculous jump. That's ridiculous, right? Which is a valid thing to say. But when it got out into the public, it was more like Carmelo Anthony thinks it's ridiculous to make such a good offer for Jeremy Lin, which means that they're not going to make the offer at all because he was the captain at the time. And how could they not be swayed in some way by his opinion? Now Carmelo Anthony looks back and is like, oh my God, why was I even saying anything? I shouldn't have said anything. That really wasn't like my concern. Why does that even matter? It's just whether or not like I think you're good for the team. I think that it made sense. He brought in, Jeremy Lin's like, I brought in $100 million in merch revenue. How do I not get at least a contract offer? Like, that's crazy. And Jeremy Lin said he would have been willing to take 8 million instead of the 25, but he didn't even get to have a conversation. And this to me was like the most important takeaway, was like how much conversation and communication is key to clarifying any kind of misunderstanding that can go on for as long as 14 years. And they were even saying how like, they know that in their minds, they're just like, I saw him, like Jeremy Lin was talking about, like, I saw him play. We played against each other. And, it was like the elephant in the room. And I was thinking, well, if he says what's up to me, I'll say what's up to him. And he's probably thinking the same thing. And then nobody ever said hi to each other until this like podcast 14 years later. And they cleared the air privately, which I thought was a really interesting thing, because you got to see that Jeremy Lin was never trying to make anything negative. He's like, I want my story to be my story, not like someone else being negative towards me as part of that story. And I thought that was a very good way of looking at it, because in entertainment news, whether it be celebrity females or athletes, the press is always pitting people against each other. Now, it's easy when you're like you're in the moment in your life and your career, and you don't really have contact with the people that they're pitting you against. So you can't necessarily call and be like, what's up? But it's interesting how like newspapers and stuff and magazines at the time are incentivized to sell newspapers. And so if they can create, even like the East-West beef with hip hop, like if they can create enough tension, you can sell a lot of papers and newspapers and whatever and capitalize on it. But what you're not realizing is like you're actually like messing with people's mental health and their long-term friendships, and even like their ability to live out their dream. And it was interesting because apparently for the New York Knicks workout that Jeremy Lin participated in, it was the best workout that anybody had ever had at the New York Knicks workout. And that's what coach Mike D'Antoni had told him. He pulled Jeremy Lin in and said, like, I only have 6 picks. I'll do my best, but like, I can't promise anything, but like, I want you to know, like, you're good. Like, I believe in you. And at that moment, Carmelo Anthony is like, oh my God, I just realized something. Like, it only now, because I hear your side of it, Jeremy, that like I understand that when Mike D'Antoni just left, Coach D'Antoni left, nobody can understand, why are you leaving? Like, you just left. And it may have been because he got so sick of the politics. And in that moment, it was like, wow, could you imagine being Mike D'Antoni, Coach D'Antoni? You believe in this kid who's Asian and nobody wants to believe in him. And even though he ends up being the captain of the team that leads the state championship of California, he gets the #1 defensive player. He has all the top stats on his own team. He's like the most rebounds, the most points, the most assists, like all these things, right? And he's the captain. How he could not, again, not get an offer. So this is repeating in his life. And then you fast forward to 2026 Knicks, and you have Jalen Brunson. And it's funny, it's like Jeremy Lin, and then Jalen, Jalen Brunson. And I didn't know Jalen Brunson's story. So to hear that he was also an underdog that nobody believed in because he was so small and, was not the typical size, height, whatever. Now, maybe because Jalen Brunson's dad was an NBA coach, it helps get him further along, like instead of just being discriminated against for being short. But to me, it was a big lesson about how in life there's the purest form of the love of the game, the love of skill, respecting someone's game, and then there's the complex nature of all the other stuff that falls in, like money, politics, and personal feelings, right? And miscommunication that doesn't occur because people don't actually just hash it out because there's too many feelings, and so they have to grow up and like look back and go, okay, in hindsight, I can look back and say like we were not mature at the time, we didn't understand, we were just in our heads, whatever. But it was interesting to see that like people that live such big lives have these same insecurities, these same concerns, these same like, for me, the way I am, I would just pick up the phone and I would have just called Coach D'Antoni if I was Jeremy Lin. I think I would have just called him. I honestly, like, if he had believed in me and we had to go work out, I'd be like, hey, Coach, I don't know if, like, this. I just want to throw this out there. Like, I'm willing to take 8 million to stay. Just let him know. Like, I am that kind of person. But when I realized I meet so many people that are not that kind of person, and even what surprises me sometimes when celebrities know each other, but they don't know each other, they don't just, like, if they're interested in work, they don't just call each other. Because they feel so, like they're imposing. Like, it's improper. And I realized like how much of Nike's motto is like so right. It's just like just do it. You know. But it's the irony of like how much we keep ourselves. We are our own worst enemies, obstacles, um, detractors, critiquers, haters. We're our own worst enemy, and we stop ourselves sometimes from being able to get um, to a point where we can find the path. Like they both wanted to be friends. They both had no beef. Carmelo Anthony had no idea that Jeremy Lin was sitting with this like feeling that Carmelo Anthony had like had basically said like no on giving him an offer, and I sit with that for like 14 years. Meanwhile, Carmelo Anthony was like, I was injured, I was just trying to get back, and I was just like in charge, and I was just trying to like, what does this mean? I didn't even know that this was what was going on in your head, and like to see them come to the realization in real time about all this stuff made me sort of understand how we end up in the situations we do in life. How a lot of times it's fear of being able to say what you need to say, but also the fear of like hearing something and then not knowing how to come out the other side with the other person where you're like good, and how to work on that. And I think with reality TV, we see so much conflict, so much tension, so much anger. That we're constantly pumped with like anger and things like that, like anxiety and drama. And it can't be physically healthy for us. I just saw a report that said that basically it's like effervescence of like community, where when the entire state of New York came out for the Knicks, it was like this energy, like everybody got actually healthier because there was something about the connection between people and sharing the same joy and energy about something that actually like unites us in a way that is like measurable to a certain extent in science. That to me, I basically was like, this is the best PR for getting off your devices you could have, is like if you're physically around each other and you share the same sports love as a conduit, for instance, you can generate so much positive energy that actually can make you healthier. Is something to really think about. Like right now we have World Cup, we have the Knicks final just happened. So I've been able to appreciate sports more in this process because I'm a participant of sports. I'm not a spectator of sports. So I'm not somebody that like watches games and like does that whole effervescence of community that you get in sports, because I just haven't been like that. But now I appreciate it more. seeing, for instance, all of the European content of people visiting for the World Cup and discovering, things like Walmart. And like, I love that they're not going to like, the high end restaurants that we always hear about. Like, they're not going to Per Se, they're not going to like Balthazar or any of Thomas Keller's, right? Places. They're going to Walmart, Wendy's, Taco Bell, Waffle House, very Americana things. And what it does, and like Yosemite, Zion National Park, places that like I haven't really thought to visit. Like, I think I take them for granted, and it was nice to sort of see through new eyes, and eyes that like have seen nice things. It's not like they've never seen anything that they can be in awe of. They don't have they do. They have castles. They have great food. So to see what they have to say about America, and then to say like everything that we hear about America, which is always like negative and dangerous and stuff, because we tend to highlight all the problems more. It was nice to be reminded of how wonderful America is. And, all this time I've been sort of like thinking about moving overseas and just like planning for retirement that way. But like now I'm thinking maybe I could stay in America, just somewhere where like the cost of living is not as high, the taxes are not as high, so that, I could still appreciate it. Maybe there is something to be said about retiring and like seeing the national parks and just taking in nature and doing forest baths all the time, and you know having getting grounded back in nature and falling back in love with your country, falling back in love with something that you've known, have been comfortable with for so long, and like reestablishing what you love about it and why you love it in the first place, and how it could get better, and how you can look at it differently, and how you can appreciate it in the future. I'm looking at things that I've seen before in front of my face with new eyes. I'm trying to apply that with a lot of other things as well. And, I think that at first I thought the World Cup coming to America was a huge mistake, obviously because of ice. And there have been problems. There was a Somali referee that got detained and he can't come in. He got denied entry. And then there was I want to say German soccer player. There was a soccer player who got detained for, I think, 7 hours. He was like, what the hell? Why would you host a World Cup if you're going to do this? And we all, obviously, for logistical and just like logical reasons, makes no sense. But the positive thing is that with the World Cup being here, we are getting advocates for America that come from overseas. So we get to look at it from a different loving perspective, joyful perspective, positive perspective that maybe we could kind of inject back into ourselves and our way, and the way that we look at things. Like, yes, there are things to critique for sure, but it's also important to remember that we are actually like, we have humanity that we can connect on with each other and try to work from there before just going against each other and just attacking each other on our differences and how we make each other mad. So if we can figure out a way to find what you like in common and then build on that, and then slowly reconnect back with your neighbors, whoever, people you haven't talked to in a while, maybe family members that you don't want to talk to, but maybe you like have missed. Maybe there's like something about like some kind of sports thing. You can like find some common ground. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming here, but um, I don't know. Tell me what you think. Did the sports make you feel some sort of way? And do you think that it'll provide some kind of unity for the future, or some kind of context on how we can like become unified in the future? I mean, for me, it was like, are we the only ones that have a new appreciation for sports and the unifying factor it has in a way that's like almost like a soft skill? I was in a leadership summit today and we are talking about soft skills and all these other things that I'm going to talk about on another episode. But I felt like the thing about sports that I didn't really realize until this whole World Cup and New York Knicks championship happened was that it distracts you. Like, we're talking about so much stuff and we're divided, but like sports is a way where you're sort of not paying attention. It's like a different division, a different unity. And then you like don't even think about the other things, and you remember, oh yeah, we actually there is a way for us to connect with each other where it's like really positive and happy and light. And like maybe we should just like focus on those things and not focus on the other negative things. Not completely ignore the negative things, but maybe just not like constantly talk about the negative things and not like constantly bring them up and just be in that space. Maybe that's where we start off. Maybe that's how we move forward as a nation. I mean, Sunday was Obama Appreciation Day. I heard that there was a weather delay on the UFC 250th birthday fights at the White House because of weather. And there's an infestation of bugs. I thought that that was very karmic, if not plague-like, and very Bible-y. So, I don't know. It remains to be seen what will happen in terms of will this country be able to unify and will we be able to recover after everything? And if we don't know how, we can just look at how sports unified us and maybe start there. So, tell me what you think. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe, follow on Substack, YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you felt what I felt with the sports and like this feeling that I have of what it can do. And then tell me what you think about communication and clarity and the regret of not hashing something out with somebody that you want to talk to but you're afraid to talk to. Or share with me a story of something like that that's happened to you that you want to impart on me or you want to share. All right, until next time.